There are places in this world that don't show up on maps, towns that once were, but aren't anymore. Places swallowed by time, erased from memory, like a whisper lost in the wind. I thought I was chasing a ghost story. Turns out, I was part of it. I drove into Ravenswood, West Virginia, 3 days ago, a mining town, or what was left of one. The kind of place where the roads crack and weeds creep through the asphalt, where windows stay dark, but you feel like something's watching, a place forgotten. I wasn't here by accident. I'm a journalist, and Ravenswood had a story, a legend called the Silent Watcher. Over 50 disappearances in the last century, no bodies, no explanations. The town barely made the news, the kind of mystery that keeps me up at night. So, I came. But from the moment I arrived, something felt wrong. The gas station had no attendant, just a pump that looked decades old. The main street was lined with storefronts, but there were no cars, no people, just the sound of the wind scraping against hollow buildings. Then I saw her, an old woman standing in the middle of the road, staring, dressed in clothes that looked like they belonged in the 50s. I called out. She didn't answer, just turned and walked toward town. And I followed. At first, Ravenswood felt like any other dying town. I found a diner, a real old-school type. Neon sign flickering checkered floors. Inside, it smelled like burnt coffee and dust. And it had people. A waitress, a few men at the counter, an old man reading a newspaper. They all stopped talking when I walked in. Eyes on me like they were expecting me. "Coffee?" the waitress asked. Her voice was normal, too normal. I asked her about the Silent Watcher. She smiled. "No one disappears here, sweetheart." Then she placed a steaming cup in front of me. The coffee was cold. I looked down at the counter. My hands were shaking. But it wasn't the coffee or the stares. It was the newspaper the old man was holding. The date at the top was 1952. I stood up fast, chair scraping. The whole diner went silent. No clatter of plates, no hum of conversation, just staring. And then the waitress spoke. "You should stay a while, Daniel." I ran. Out of the diner, down the street. The sky looked wrong, like an old photograph, colors washed out. I made it to my car, fumbling for my keys. But the lot was empty. No car, just cracked pavement and weeds. A voice whispered behind me, "You're not supposed to leave." I turned. The town was different. The buildings, older. The signs, the paint, everything looked newer, as if time had rewound itself. And then I saw the people, lining the street, watching. I recognized them. The waitress, the old man, the silent woman from the road. Their clothes were cleaner, their faces younger. I looked into a storefront window, heart hammering. And that's when I saw the reflection. It was me, but not me. The reflection staring back was dressed in 1950s clothing. Hair slicked back, skin paler. My face but decades younger. A ghost of myself. The realization didn't hit all at once. It crept in, slow and insidious, like a shadow stretching at dusk. I stood frozen in the street, my mind clawing for explanations, but deep down, something in me already knew the truth. I wasn't the investigator. I was the missing person. I had been here before. This town, this story. It wasn't something I was chasing. It was something I had lived. The people I'd spoken to, the ones who had seemed off, too perfect, too rehearsed, they weren't real. Or rather, they weren't alive. Neither was I. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. The diner was gone. The buildings were shifting, their forms flickering between ruin and pristine 1950s facades. The town was unraveling before my eyes, revealing its true self. Not a place, a prison. A cold certainty settled over me. I remembered now. My name had been on those old missing posters, the ones I found in the sheriff's office. I had been here before, walking these streets, asking the same questions. And every time the town had rewritten itself, reshaping my reality until I forgot. Until I started the cycle again. I looked down at my hands. They weren't the hands of a man in his 30s. They were younger, just like my reflection in the glass. My breath hitched. I was staring at a version of myself that had been lost decades ago. The people of Ravenswood weren't haunting this town. They were the town. Their souls woven into its streets, bound by an unspoken rule. Once you become part of Ravenswood, you never leave. And now, I was one of them. I had always been. I felt it happening. The memories slipping again. The weight of my past dissolving. The town was merciful in its cruelty. It never let you suffer for long. Soon I wouldn't question why I was here. Soon I wouldn't remember anything at all. The last thing I saw was a car pulling into town. A new visitor. A new story. The cycle beginning again. A knock on the door. The smell of coffee. My hands flipping through old newspaper clippings. My name is Daniel. No, that's not right. That's not... Hello? This is Daniel Graves. I'm a journalist, and I'd love to ask you a few questions about the Silent Watcher. You have time to talk? They say that some places are cursed to repeat themselves. That time for them isn't linear, but a loop, a cycle endlessly repeating, trapping those who step too close. I thought Ravenswood was the only town like that. But it isn't. Highway 20, Oregon. A road known for its silence and its ghosts. I wasn't looking for trouble that night. Just a place to rest, maybe a cup of coffee before I kept driving. But some roads don't lead where you expect them to. And some exits, you can never leave. There are places on this earth that don't want to be found. Places that slip through the cracks of reality, existing just beyond the reach of time. Highway 20 in Oregon is one of those places. They call it the Ghost Highway. People vanish here. Their cars left behind, engines still warm, but the drivers, gone. No signs of struggle, no bodies ever found, just gone. I didn't believe the stories, not really. Until I found myself on that road, and I saw the diner. It was late, probably close to midnight. I'd been driving for hours, my eyes heavy, my gas tank nearing empty. The road stretched ahead, endless and dark, flanked by towering pine trees that swallowed the moonlight. My GPS had stopped working miles back. No cell signal, no signs of life. Then I saw it. A diner. Out here, in the middle of nowhere? It didn't make sense. But the sign was glowing. The parking lot had a few cars. It looked normal. A little run down maybe, but still open. I pulled in thinking I'd grab a coffee, maybe ask for directions. But the moment I stepped inside, something felt off. It was like stepping into a time capsule. The checkered floors, the red leather booths, the faded Coca-Cola posters on the walls. The air smelled of burnt coffee and cigarette smoke, like a place frozen in time. There were people inside. A few truckers at the counter, an old man reading a newspaper, a waitress wiping down the tables. They all turned to look at me when I walked in. "Coffee?" the waitress asked. Her voice was sweet, rehearsed, like she'd said that word 1,000,000 times before. I nodded, sliding into a booth near the window. The coffee came fast, steaming, but when I took a sip, it was ice cold. That's when I noticed the newspaper the old man was reading. The date at the top, July 13th, 1979. My stomach twisted. I looked around. The truckers, the waitress, even the old man. They all looked wrong. Too still. Too perfect. Their movements synchronized. Their smiles just a little too wide. I needed to leave. Now. I stood up, mumbling some excuse, tossing a few crumpled bills on the table. I pushed open the door, stepped outside, and found myself back inside. No, 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 no. I turned, grabbed the handle, yanked the door open. I was inside. Again. I don't know how many times I tried. Running outside, getting in my car, speeding down the highway, only to find myself pulling into the diner's parking lot again. The waitress watched. The old man never turned a page in his newspaper. And then, I saw it. A bulletin board by the counter filled with missing persons posters. My eyes scanned the faces, dozens of them, all with the same last known location, Highway 20. And then, I saw my own face. My name, my photo. The date of my disappearance, 1982. You never left. The walls flickered. The red booths cracked. The black and white floor tiles faded to dust. The entire diner was unraveling, revealing what it really was, a hollow place, a trap that fed on time itself. And I was part of it. I looked down at my hands. They weren't the hands of a man in his 30s anymore. They were younger, just like my reflection in the glass. I had always been here. The bell above the door chimes. A new traveler steps inside. The cycle begins again. Hello? This is Liam Mercer. I'm a photographer, and I'd love to ask you about the Devil's Bend Diner. You have time to talk? Inspired by true events in Oregon. Highway 20 has long been called the Ghost Highway, a place where travelers have vanished without a trace. In the 1970s and 80s, lone drivers disappeared, their vehicles left behind. But no sign of struggle, no bodies ever found. Some locals claim that long ago, a diner stood along Highway 20. But today, there is no record of it ever existing. Some stories don't just end. They linger. They wait. And sometimes, they pull you in. If you enjoyed this descent into the unknown, don't forget to subscribe. Share your thoughts, and tell us, have you ever felt like you've been somewhere before, even when you knew you hadn't? Let us know in the comments. And remember, some roads don't just take you places, they take something from you. You never left.